So what I did for the project was I did something on learning and memory benefit that you can receive from music. A lot of people have asked me about this before and I find it really intriguing, so I hope you do too. To start with, music's potential effect on learning and memory has much research that has found that music can be utilized in multiple ways to improve your educational aspects, such as knowledge accumulation, affective states, improving your grades, and they will show to be very important. To start, we will look at what has been found on music and exams. As stressful as exams can be, it also interferes with the student's performance. One efficient method of dispelling stress is linked to pleasant music, and this creates a cognitive dissonance, in which contradicting thoughts are motivating you to get rid of the problem, and allows an easier approach to getting rid of that stress. Once it is done, what once was pain now becomes pleasure, and the focus on the topic at hand is to a much greater extent. One supporting study is that from Kabanik and Company. By using a sample of 14 to 17-year-old children and adolescents, students chose whether to take music courses or not. By measuring the results in all subjects, it shows that the students who participated in a music course had improved grades over those who did not, and strongly supports the suggested link between music and cognition. Notable causes of this study's result are that of two. There is the pure acknowledgement and confirmation of the evidence provided in this study, and this seemingly suggests a direction of causality. And then there are personality variables. These are what differentiate each of us from each other on how we approach music. Ultimately, these dictate how we see emotion, being a mechanism that drives cognitive dissonance. These variables are also used to determine how we use music to improve our performance on many cognitive tasks, most notably on learning. Moving on, we'll capitalize on how the accumulation of knowledge is impacted. In this case, like on recalling information, attaining it is also obstructed by stress, and affects our ability to absorb and memorize. Some believe this to be biological, while others see it to be psychological, but in this case, it is both. The brain areas that use memory, and the psychological stress that might accompany it. A lot of research has shown many areas of the brain that are stimulated in musically trained individuals, and I listed them here, and it just so happens to connect to both semantic and episodic memory banks in both hemispheres, which will be explained later. This implies, of course, that the musical expertise improves your memory. This was analyzed by George and Cook, comparing both memory potential in musically trained individuals and in individuals without any musical training. As expected, though, the trained individuals did have better abilities, showing working and long-term memory improvement, and this suggests a great academic benefit. What has seemed to be one of the most important factors in music with learning and memory is that of an affective state. This can be simply described as how you feel when you operate, such as with feeling like stress, notably during learning. We already touched base on the negative effects from unwanted affective states, but there's also evidence on positive moods and affect to improve performance in not only cognition but also creativity, which I thought was really intriguing. To put it simply, cognitive ability equals learning efficiency, hence the importance of affective states. Dosseville et al. Happens to have conducted a supporting study on first and second year undergraduates. Essentially, they had to watch a video lecture with slides and were unable to take notes. One group had classical music playing as compared to the other, who had no music, and were measured on exam performance and positive affect afterward. And positive affect was measured by a questionnaire. As expected, and coinciding with previous slides, both were higher in the music group, further supporting this concept. One consistent question is whether it transitions across age or not. The answer seems to be yeah, it does. Another study had teachers at 2 school centers send to the researchers a copy of annual reports on their children's grades, split into 3 groups: music practice, no practice, and handicraft practice, which is like art and drawing. Their marks were overseen and averaged. Even at younger ages, the grades of those who practiced at school and or at home were higher to a great extent, despite what grade they started with. In this case, the grade leap was greater, and really puts the oboe's use into perspective. As a result, this implies a link with language skills and musical activity. It seemed to follow a dose-responsive relationship, which that pretty much means that the more effort you put into music, the more intelligence you display. One such belief is that motivation contributes greatly. This is evidenced by the goals that children playing instruments have reached. As they are more extensive than those who do not play, it really seemed like, and it is inspirational to children, which causes them to work even harder for what they desire. Circling back to memory, it is important to know of its use, as music and knowledge would be impossible without it. For an example, how we interpret music is determined by pre-existing knowledge we have of many aspects. Every memory counts, for they are interconnected in long-term memory and attached to one another like glue. It happens every day and operates closely on chunking and situational associations, which I will explain right after this. These are very important, for synapse strength is dependent on world events, which is affecting our understanding of music even. Chunking is simple. Chunking is simple. It is a collaboration of neurons that when one part of it is recalled, the entire group is recalled. Like chess strategies, where you see one move and then link it to an entire strategic play, it plays a large role in music. We hear notes, but connect 3 to 5 of them together, with phrasing seen as a higher level chunk. It is vital when listening to music, and this exercise of chunking assists greatly in studying for tests and remembering daily responsibilities. The situational aspect is a little more in-depth. As mentioned earlier, it does use episodic memory, which episodic memory uses personal emotions and responses to personify them. It's how you remember. When music is present in an occasion, the single song in which you listened acts as a situational cue, which calls on that neuronal consolidation into your conscious mind, and recalls more details than before. It is a great educational benefit to music, and researchers have touched base on it themselves. It is used a lot on cognition research. There were tons of studies on it, and episodic interpretation does tend to show an influence on your affective state, which is integral, as mentioned earlier. Along with these memories, there are also schemas. Think of them as the groundwork for understanding life events in a general perspective. These lie under the structural regularities of music and create expectations for what should happen. If you're in psychology, you probably already knew that. It all originates from perceptual representations, which effectively identifies and defines what you are seeing and experiencing in your own mind. It is necessary to identify music and therefore needs these schemas. The last portion of memory is relevant to music learning, is called semi-activation. I apologize. Essentially, these memories and abilities can operate unconsciously, yet still affect your performance on exams and other academic tasks without you even knowing. So long as stimuli exposure, and in this case it would be via music, is present, it will prime your neural networks to supply an expectation, playing on both your schemas and your episodic memories. Thus, it plays a very prominent role in music memory. So, I guess to put it all together, I kind of linked it here. Music learning and potential takes a sort of preliminary process of operation. First, there must be a generalized schema bank to differentiate your situations. With that, they are used to define and interpret what the musical tracks and experiences say and mean to you. That will instill a type of affective state in the individual in question, which will ultimately influence how one will perform in both learning and memory. Music does seem to be a very powerful tool, and why I have such an intrigue in it, and so does anyone watching this, really. And when used properly, it certainly proves to aid in the quest for knowledge. These are my references if you can read them, and thank you very much.